This is this between us.
The number one podcast in the world.
This is
the JBU.Show featuring Austin
from the Miller Talk Podcast.
Allen,
the American Sincerist.
And now your host,
Cam Allen.
واحد دون تواني وسنضرب الآناق عن أجسادهم ونحرر الأقصى الحزين العاري ونقود جيش الله منجز وعده ونسومهم سوء العذاب القاني.
All right, how's it going, everybody? My name is Chris, and this is the JBU Show, and I suppose I don't need the overhead speakers on in order to do this. I don't think the whole house needs to hear it. Anyway, I'm going to let this video play one more time so you have a chance to read the subtitles, or I guess I'll read them for you, because it's truly incredible, and I will note this is an older video. I'll tell you exactly where and when this is from. But you might be shocked to learn that this is children in the United States. U.S. children. We'll come back to that. We will defend the land of divine guidance with our bodies, and we will sacrifice our souls without hesitation. We will chop off their heads, and we will liberate the sorrowful and exalted Alaska Mosque. We will lead the army of God fulfilling his promise, and we will subject them to eternal torture. Rebels, rebels, rebels. Obviously, this is a song. Glorious steeds, call us and lead us onto paths leading to the mosque, the Alaska Mosque. The blood of martyrs protects us. Paradise needs real men. Again, those are American kids in Pennsylvania. Now, this was at some sort of, religious center in Pennsylvania a few years back. I believe it was 2019. In fact, there's actually a community note here that says that it was... Oh, no, there isn't. There was before, but apparently there isn't now. But anyway, it just said that it was actually in 2019. I looked it up to make sure that it was a real video. And actually from the United States, because even I had a hard time believing it. But it is. And, of course, the, leaders of the religious institution, whatever it was, were like, oh, no, we didn't, no, that wasn't, that was just some guy who brought in some kid. They just wandered in off the street. We have nothing to do with that. Right. Anyway, you probably see the title tonight, 50 Blue States of America. And I titled it that because we have an article here today. Democrats could win a majority of governorships in 2026. And so I've prepared a little list here. I want to show you what this country would look like if, in fact, Democrats had all 50 states via governorships and state races, houses, all of those things. Because one of the things that we still never talk about enough today is the fact that, yes, voting for the president is important, but you need to be showing up to vote every single time you have an opportunity to put a vote in. It doesn't matter what it's for. And your local elections, your state elections matter far more than anything else. Besides perhaps Congress. Far more. And this is a good example of why, even though this is not, in fact, the United States, this is Canada, it still is a example of why. Canada recently banned the vast majority of firearms. I believe they banned semi-automatics. Hold on, let me double check real quick. I think it was banning the semi-automatic action itself. Let's see what Grok says real fast. What did Canada recently ban regarding firearms? On March 7, 2025, the Canadian government amended its classification regulations to prohibit an additional 179 makes and models of assault-style firearms. These are described as semi-automatic firearms. So yeah, basically all semi-automatics. Which, you notice that clever, like, shift in wording there? How they went from assault-style weapons and just made that mean semi-automatic weapons? As if that's not all weapons. 99.9% of guns made and sold today are semi-automatic. I.e., not automatic. Anyway, let's go back to the video here.
The declaration period for firearms owners is scheduled to end next week. So far, only 2.5% of the estimated 2 million affected firearms have been declared, and 98% of firearms owners haven't made a declaration. So if they're not declaring by next week, what's your plan, Minister?
The RCMP and other agencies
Shout
will
out to
be
that 98%.
Available throughout the spring and the summer to do the collection.
And you're saying that your plan is over the spring and the summer
He thinks it'll
to
take
deploy
3
RCMP
months.
officers to go door to door to firearms owners
That's
and
exactly
seize their
what he said.
firearms?
These are additional resources, so these are those who are off duty, those who may be retired.
Also, we're going to spend extra money,
I
is
just
what
find
he's
that
saying.
very concerning that we're going to be sending police officers door to door because, frankly, many police forces across the country are refusing to participate in your program. And I think they have very good reasons to not want to participate in this program. And putting people who are no longer serving as RCMP officers going door to door. Are you not concerned about this at all, Minister?
Well, I think you may not understand the full extent of the program, Mr. Lloyd. It's not a door-to-door program. It is a mobile collection will occur. The program that we have in place is voluntary, strictly voluntary, so they're not.
Let me clarify what he says about voluntary. He's not saying it's voluntary to surrender your firearm. He's saying it's voluntary for the officers, whether or not they want to do it.
Compelled to take part in the program, although compliance with the law is not voluntary. And that, as you're aware, as of October the 31st or 30th of this year, the amnesty that was extended expires.
So after that amnesty expires, what's your government's plan for those firearms owners that might still be in possession of these firearms?
Every police of jurisdiction will, as you're aware, need to enforce the law.
Which means jail. For a firearm that you purchased legally, got the background checks, all of that, and then they just decided one day is no longer legal. Canadians, don't give up your guns. Yes, you might go to jail for that. Don't give them up. Now, you don't have rights like we do here in the United States, and that sucks and all of that, but I'm telling you, you will lose your country if you do this. This is the line for you. You don't have much of a country left to hold on to at this moment, which is why Alberta wants to leave. But without this, there is zero hope. Do not give them up willingly. Make them, at the minimum, make them come and get them. Not saying be violent, not saying fight. Don't give them up. And of course, you know, this should be a lesson to Americans as well, obviously, because as part of what the United States would look like if we did, in fact, have 50 states turn blue with Democrat governors, make no mistake, they will do the exact same thing. They've said it many times. They've tried many times. Biden did several things that were entirely outside of the law to come after guns. Going after polymer 80s, 3D printed firearms, etc. If you live in a blue state today, you most likely live under an assault weapons ban. I do. You at least live under magazine restrictions. You at least live under extended background checks and other limitations. I mean, it goes on and on and on, right? I could list a million things, but... And they do not care that it is unconstitutional. They want more. It's never enough. Because it's not about the gun. If that was true, they would have been satisfied with outlawing the automatics back in the 1980s, because that was the problem in the 1980s. It's not about the type of gun. It is about the gun, period. I was going to check one other thing here. Does the Canadian Charter of Rights have any gun amendments? I know they're not called amendments, whatever. Okay, no. There isn't. I didn't think there was, but the Canadian Charter of Rights is a joke. They literally are a bunch of rights that the government says, you can have these until we decide you can't. And most Canadians do not understand the fundamental difference. And this is the mistake that you guys make. You do not understand the fundamental difference between a right granted by government, i.e. a permission, and an inalienable right. Now, could our government still take our inalienable rights? Well, they could try, sure. But there is a fundamental difference in what those two things mean, in the way that they are understood, both by the people and by the government. Because nobody who understands what an inalienable right means, would ever say the words that, well, free speech has its limitations. No, it doesn't. It is, in fact, indefinite. I've gone through that argument many times, so I'm not going to go through it again on why. If you're curious, go find out. But, God, there's so many things here. So I want to, I was originally going to make this episode about Tommy Robinson, but Austin wasn't able to make it tonight, so I decided to wait. But I am still going to play two of the clips. He was recently on Steven Crowder's show, and he said a couple things that really stood out. Austin brought them to my attention. I'm going to bring them to yours. I'm going to play them real quick because they're not necessarily directly in line with what we're talking about tonight, so let's just get it out of the way. But yeah, like I said, they're spot on. Right now, we see a fracturing on the right side of the party. I don't believe that the fracturing has anything to do with conservatives, generally speaking. Personally, I think that it's infiltration and specific attempts to split the party, because there's just too much overlap these days between the far left and the far right. It's rather incredible how certain people on the far right, they're almost indistinguishable from the left when it comes to, in particular, a certain topic, which is what Tommy is going to address here at the beginning. And I think that this carries some extra weight for two reasons. First of all, Tommy Robbins, is it Robbins or Robinson? Tommy Robinson. I always get that wrong. I always confuse him with Tony Robbins. Anyway, just the name, not the person. Anyway, I have a lot of respect for this man, because this man has put it on the line in a way a lot of us haven't. In the same way Enrique Torres has. And while I haven't agreed with Enrique Torres on necessarily everything he ever said or did, he stood up for what he believed in, and he actually put himself on the line for it. even if he didn't intend to begin with. Tommy Robinson, in a big way. His government has, and continues to try to put him in jail solely for his speech. Yet he continues to speak. It's easy to say that you would do that too. But the fact is, 9.5 out of 10 of you listening wouldn't. And I know this because during COVID, most of you put on masks. Most of you got the shot, even when you didn't want to, because your job required it.
Don't have guns in the UK.
And you weren't willing to get a new job, even. You weren't even willing to get a new job to avoid breaking your principles. I understand. You might say, yeah, you know what? I did wear a mask, but I would never do that again. Well, yeah, sure. It's easy to make that decision now in hindsight when you realize, oh shit, I was kind of going along with stuff even though I didn't agree with it. It matters in that moment when there's actually a cost to it. When you're actually getting kicked out of the store and screamed at, arrested. I know, because I got kicked out of a lot of places and nearly arrested twice for refusing to put a mask on during that time. And you know how many people quietly told me that they appreciated what I was doing or gave me words of encouragement one or another? Quite a few. You know how many actually stood up those times that I was being kicked out or threatened with arrest or generally screamed at by a leftist? Ironically, with their mask down in order to scream at me louder. 0. Not a single person over the course of the 2 years that masks were required in my state did anybody else say a word. Anyway, let's play this clip. 12:30. Okay, I apologize. Normally I have these ready, but just the way I had to pull stuff before the show tonight, it didn't work out. So I got the timestamps. I just gotta zoom the video around here. All right, it's gonna be a little bit early, but here we go.
On every issue. So
yeah,
I read some comments online. Do you think, really?
I mean,
where have you been?
I have a pretty good track record of having anyone on who will have a conversation in good faith and being pretty clear about where I line up. Explain to Americans, though, because I've talked about this as a half Canadian, what has happened to the UK? Because there also is an undercurrent right now of people saying, actually, Islam, even on the right, it's a small faction, Islam's not a problem. Actually.
Oh, they are such arseholes. They're lying. No, I'm telling you, they're lying. They're acting like traitors to your nation. I've seen Tucker Carlson talk about it. It's just like, really? So you're actually going to lie to the American public that Islam's not a danger just because you have this disagreement, whether it be with Israel or because Qatar are funding you or whatever's happening? And lots of the commentators on the right. And I think the problem for Americans is you haven't lived what we're living in Europe, so we're surrounded by them. In my hometown, there's 45 mosques, white English are a minority, 50% Kashmiri Pakistani. I've seen the rapes, my family have been affected by it, terrorism, jihad, the hostility, the violence. So whether it be me in the UK or someone in Sweden or someone in Germany and someone in France, we get it. Yeah?
Right.
But then we've got some commentator sitting in the United States who doesn't know a single Muslim, hasn't experienced anything, sitting telling us we need a Muslim-Christian alliance. I said, well, you tell that to the last 1,400 years of victims of Christians. Right. What's the Christian population in Syria? And what was it? Right. It's gone down to what, 0.2%, has it?
Yep.
From what? What about Iraq, Afghanistan? I don't want to hear Tucker Carlson tell me how good and how great you can have an alliance with Muslims and Islam. I want to hear from the Christians who live under Islam. I want to hear from the minorities that are persecuted, raped and pillaged by Islam. I want to hear from the ex-Muslims who can't actually speak freely really, because they're going to get killed because they're apostates. Or I want to hear from people who have experienced it in the UK and actually understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So I don't need some commentator who has absolutely no idea telling me about a Muslim-Christian alliance, because there will never be a Muslim-Christian alliance, because we have 1,400 years of history that tells us that. Not since 1948.
Yeah.
This didn't start in 1948.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
It's mad.
People don't know where the term leatherneck comes from with our Marines. It was to fight off Islamic Somali pirates.
Literally, since the day America was formed as a country, we've been being attacked by radical Muslims, we being Americans, for nothing more than their religion, because we are non-believers. That is their words. That is what they told Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. We will continue to attack you because you are infidels. And our religion tells us to. So what we do? That's why he's talking about the term Leatherneck Marines. This was where the Marines established themselves as the most badass fighting force in the world. They went and they sank all of the Barbary pirates' boats. They completely eliminated their ability to wage war on American ships. And what did the Muslims do? They agreed to peace, because instead of going and eliminating their whole country, we just eliminated their ability to wage war and offered peace. They accepted, with their fingers crossed behind their back, and they took the next 10 years of peace, roughly, and rebuilt. Built new ships, started attacking Americans again, unprovoked. So what did we do? We went back and kicked their ass even harder and offered them peace, which lasted until they decided to attack us again, and thus started the never-ending cycle. This did not start with the Sheik. It did not start with Israel in 1948. This started the day we became a country. And really, if you want to be honest, it started in the year 635 AD. I went through this history not too long back, when Muhammad died. And Muslims started attacking Christians. A lot of people like to start at the Crusades, so it looks like Christians attacked first. No, Muslims attacked first. The Crusades were Christians trying to take back the land that was stolen from them from the radical Muslims. And look, why don't we attack Indonesia? Country, I think the third largest population in the world, fourth largest population in the world, largest Muslim population in the world. Why don't we attack India, one of the world's largest Muslim populations? Or any number of other countries that have significant populations of Muslims. Because it's not about us attacking them for being Muslim. It's about the fact that they will not stop attacking us. Radical Muslims won't, because they believe God told them to. And every time we defeat them, we offer them peace, and they agree so long as it takes them to rebuild power to attack us again. And that is why we cannot stop in Iran until the IRGC is gone. We would be foolish to. Anyway, like I said, that's not the point for tonight. I have another timestamp here. Oh, and on the actual point that Tommy Robinson was making there on Tucker Carlson, all of these conservatives that now are talking about a Christian-Muslim alliance, you're fucking out of your minds. I don't know what Tucker Carlson's deal is. I don't know if when he went to Qatar, they showed him some fake documents that convinced him of some conspiracy theory behind the scenes. I don't know if he's really just gone down this Jew rabbit hole conspiracy world, or if he's just trying to make money. He just realized, I can make money doing this. Let's do it. I don't know. His dad was a propagandist for the CIA. Maybe he is too. Maybe he always has been. He sure seemed like he was on a decent path his last couple years at Fox, and for the first, I don't know, 6 months, a year after he left Fox. And then he just went fucking psycho. I don't get it. I just know that when you base your worldview on principles, you don't go down those roads. And if you haven't noticed, radical Islamists, they seem to be partnering with the left, who are even more stupid to partner with them. I mean, at least Christians have a lot of shared ground with Muslims, even if we don't have complete shared ground, and Muslims have sworn to kill us. They've sworn to kill leftists, too, who are secular, whatever the term is. Primarily atheist, I guess, is what I'm going for. But also, you know, the gay thing and all the rest of it. They're just another group playing Americans against each other. I have no problem with somebody who follows the Muslim faith, though I think that you follow it incorrectly if you're not a radical Islamist, because the Quran definitely says these things. But I have no problem if you follow the faith and you have no interest in enacting Sharia law or any of that. I don't trust you. Because the fact is, your faith says that it is okay to lie until you have sufficient power or numbers to force Sharia law. So even if you pretend to be a peaceful Muslim, or even if you are a peaceful Muslim, I don't have a problem with you, but I don't trust you either. And the fact is, if you want to be an American, you do have to swear an oath and allegiance to this country, and that includes the Constitution, the values and the principles that we all share. This country is unique to all other countries on earth because it is based on a set of ideas. What makes us American is not the location in which we are born. It is the fact that we are brought up with, agree to, and believe in a shared set of ideas, which are undeniably rooted in the Christian faith. Whether or not you're Christian, that's just a fact. So, as long as you agree to those things, that's fine. But if you're going to chant death to America and try and implement Sharia and all of these things, like, you expect me to just fucking roll over and accept it? Tommy actually goes on later in this interview, and I don't think this is what my second time stamp is, but if it is, I apologize for repeating it. He goes on later in this interview to talk about, you know, they absolutely hate me, but they at least respect me. The rest of you who just cower to them, they don't respect you. Nor should they. What man respects somebody that cowers? I mean, I believe what I believe. You can call me racist for it. You can call me a bigot. You can call me a hater. You can call me whatever you want. I don't care. I believe what I believe. And that's not going to change no matter how much you may like or dislike it.
The European Court of Human Rights, I think in 2007, ruled Sharia law was incompatible with Western democracy and freedom.
It absolutely is.
Why are Texas just had a vote. 95% of Republican primary voters want a ban on Sharia. Why is this even a conversation?
Right.
Why is, coming from the top of the government, is Sharia not banned? Well, it doesn't mean, even when you ban it, because we've got 100 Sharia courts, 100 Sharia law courts in the UK.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, even if you ban Sharia courts, they just have de facto Sharia courts, like a lot of divorces in Dearborn. Exactly.
And they don't call the police. They don't need paperwork. Yeah. If they get married, the judge, the Sharia judge, the
Talik, say it 3 times. The guy gets
and then a divorce. The girl only gets 50. So for the women, like I always used to say to my ex-wife, right, you see if they win, I'm all right. I'll just marry 2 of your mates. Like, I can have 3 wives.
Yeah.
You're fucked. I said, it's all about you, women. It's all about you. So when you see these Western women, in a Sharia court in the UK, if there's inheritance, the girl, say there's a brother and a sister, she gets 50% less than him. Because she's worth 50% less. Because the Quran says she's worth half of the man.
Right.
And that's the Muslim women that are worth half of the man.
Yeah.
Now you look at our women. Our women, like, and again, statistics, which matter, because then it's not my opinion, 3% of the UK population is Muslim men. 90% of the convictions of men who have raped children, 90% are Muslim men. 30% are called Mohammed.
Well, and here's the ultimate problem, though. Because I'll be a chauvinist if I say this. The truth is, you don't get that policy without female voters. That's the big irony. You don't get men and women's sports if not for white suburban voters. You don't get Sharia, you don't get the Epic Center if not for white female suburban voters. And so if you,
I think a lot of that comes from, I think a lot of this issue.
Well, women are inherently liberal. They're inherently left, and feminism.
I don't think they're educated either on what Islam is. I don't think
they don't, but they never will be because they vote very emotionally. That's what feminism spurred. And so you're a chauvinist if you're like, well, look, this is a problem, and they go, don't infantilize me. All right, I guess it's infantilizing you to tell you that you have no rights under Islam, to tell you what that looks like. So the greatest ally, ironically, to Islam encroachment in the West is white suburban feminist women, and they don't
Tucker
even
Carlson's
know it.
trying
Otherwise,
hard,
how do you
though.
explain? And
He's
you
trying
can't,
to take
right?
that
It's
role.
rhetorical. When you see someone with a Palestine flag next to a rainbow flag, right? It defies reason. Well, it's a feminist worldview of, they're victims, so let me help them, regardless of ideology.
Partly victims, or they're all working for the destruction of the West, and they share that common goal to bring down the West through Marxism, through their political ideas, the destruction of the state. They want to end the police, defund the police, all because they want destabilization, because they want to replace the system of democracy.
Yeah. Well, the feminists just call it patriarchy.
that comes
the West
in
just
later.
call it, how Islam just calls it the West, decadence, that kind of thing. And LGBTQAIP, I don't know what they call
it. We've seen this before. You've seen, the Iranians saw it in the Islamic Revolution, because the Marxists and the communists worked with the Islamists in order to overthrow the country. And then when the Islamists got in, they killed the Marxists, and fucking the only good benefit is if they win, they're first to go.
Yeah.
Same in Lebanon.
There's a silver lining.
Same in Lebanon. It's not like you can't look to where this has happened, this alliance. It's happened so many times.
Well, Lebanon's a good example because you mentioned Christians. There was a pretty significant portion of Lebanon that was a Christian population. Not anymore.
Till they let them in.
Yep.
Till they let them in. I suppose somehow you can find a way of blaming Israel, can't you, guys?
Yeah, Lebanon. Yeah. Well, we have one of the highest concentrations of Lebanese people. I think actually Montreal is the highest concentration of Lebanese people. There's a specific neighborhood outside of Lebanon.
Okay. Now, I don't want to get into the whole Israel thing right now and what problems there actually are and what there might not be. I know everybody's got their strong opinions on that, and I've gone over my position many times, so maybe I'll save that for when we go through this, hopefully tomorrow with Austin. He's a couple hours ahead of me. I've said this before, and he works earlier than I do, so staying up late for him on the weekends doesn't always work out. Nonetheless, we'll cover that at that point. But I just wanted to play those couple clips real quick, and actually this story here too real fast ties into all this. 3 people have been arrested in Paris after an attempted bomb attack outside of the Bank of America. Now, of course, they don't mention, it's the BBC, and they don't mention anything about the perpetrators. So what do we know? Well, we know they're Muslim. It's also Paris, so chances are it's like 99% Muslim at this point. Regardless, what I was shocked to learn, though, was not that there was an attempt outside of the Bank of America, not that this has to do with the Iran war. What I was shocked about was how many places this has actually been tried in Europe in the last few days. Let's see. 2 further individuals taken into custody, Iraq-Iran war, proxies, yada yada. Old phone fled the scene. Similar attacks have been foiled in France, Netherlands, Britain, and Norway in recent weeks. And the United States as well. We know there was, 2 or 3 attempted attacks? You need to be very careful right now. Radical Islamists are everywhere. Unfortunately, we have let them into our country in large numbers, many of whom we have no idea they're even here. And despite the fact that the United States goes to great lengths to entirely avoid civilian casualties in war, they will happily blow up a kindergarten. You need to be extra careful right now. You, as an American, left, right, center, doesn't matter, are under attack right now. And whether you believe this is our fault, we've brought this on ourselves, that completely ignores the history, but fine, doesn't matter. The point is, you need to be careful no matter where you live in America, no matter what you do, no matter how insignificant you might think you are a target because you are not Muslim and you live in America. Period. These are people that will blow up their own children if they believe that it is for the greater good of advancing the Quran. Anyway, I want to get to the main topic for tonight, so we're going to move on. But I guess we'll start with the article that gave me the inspiration here. This comes from The Intelligencer. Democrats could win a majority of governorships in 2026. The political world is understandably focused on the 2026 Senate and House races. The question of whether the Republican Party will maintain its trifecta control in Washington has enormous repercussions for the last 2 years of Donald Trump's second term. But partisan control of state governments matters too. In fact, in my opinion, it matters more. Even at the federal level, as the ongoing battle of Republican and Democrat gerrymanders shows. There will be 36 gubernatorial elections in November, with each party defending 18 governorships. The overall partisan balance is currently close, with Republicans holding 26, Democrats 24. Each party has a clear, achievable goal. The GOP is trying to avoid the usual midterm pattern of losses by the party controlling the White House. It's happened in 16 out of the last 20 midterms. While Democrats are seeking their first national majority of governorships since the catastrophic losses in 2010. Since governors have their own agenda and they command media attention that most members of Congress can only envy, national partisan divisions aren't strictly transferable to gubernatorial elections. But in this day and age, straight ticket voting is still ascendant and partisanship matters. As Sabato's Crystal Ball observes in looking at the 2026 races, Republicans hold 22 of 25 governorships in states that voted for Donald Trump all 3 times he was on the ballot. The exceptions are Kansas, Kentucky, and North Carolina, while Democrats hold 17 of the 19 states that never voted for Trump. New Hampshire and Vermont are the exceptions there. Of the half-dozen states that backed presidential candidates from both parties in the last 3 elections, Democrats hold 4, Republicans hold 2. So Democrats are competitive with Republicans in the overall count, despite there being more red states than blue states because they are doing better in the swing presidential states. And they are a little more extended into redder states than Republicans are extended into bluer states. Among the red states with Democratic governors, 2 of them, Kentucky and North Carolina, are not holding gubernatorial elections in 2026. The current 2-term governor of Kansas is Democrat Laura Kelly, who is term limited, and who has benefited enormously from divisions in the GOP ranks. If Republicans can stay united, they will be favored to capture this governorship. Similarly, in deep blue Vermont's very popular and non-MAGA Republican governor Phil Scott hasn't announced plans for 2026. If he retires, Vermont will almost certainly elect a Democrat. One big question in the more numerous purple states with competitive 2026 governor's races is whether a national Democratic breeze will flip the Cook Political Report calls toss-ups in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Wisconsin. All 5 of these states were carried by Joe Biden in 2020, but Donald Trump in 2024. Here's a closer look at the crucial races. We're not going to go through that specifically, but again, those states are Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin. That's it. The gubernatorial races highlighted above aren't the only potential newsworthy contests, of course. Republicans are thought to have a solid advantage in Ohio, where Trump has won 3 times, and Republicans have controlled the governorship since 2010. The likely GOP nominee and 2024 presidential candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, is in a very close race with former state health director Amy Acton. Similar in Iowa, where the bottom has fallen out for Democrats since 2014, State Auditor Rob Sand, the only Democratic statewide elected official left, has a shot at the governorship thanks to the very unpopular performance of retiring incumbent Republican Kim Reynolds and a large GOP field to replace her. Perhaps the weirdest possibility in this whole country is in California, where the scattered 10-candidate field in the state's nonpartisan top 2 primary could in theory send 2 Republicans to the general election, locking out Democrats who have an enormous majority in the electorate. So don't get too fixated on congressional elections. There's plenty of drama down ballot. Okay. Here's the point of this. If you let Democrats, if you are in a red state or a purple state, if you let Democrats get control of your state, you're done. We all voted for Donald Trump for a reason. And while some of us, myself included, are questionable about that vote at the moment, or not particularly happy at the exact moment in time, that does not mean that you just give up and go home. Because the alternative is far, far, far worse. And I'm not saying vote for the lesser of 2 evils. You still have time right now to make sure that you have a quality candidate in place. Make it happen. Get involved now. But I want to give you just a little window into what Democratic states, like my own, of Washington, have looked like. And the plan that Democrats are going into 2026 with. Because we all know that they have been extremely unpopular, both with the United States, especially with quote-unquote independents, and with their own people. The radical leftists think they're not far left enough. The bulk of the Democrat Party doesn't understand why they keep listening to the radical leftists. So what's the plan? Lie. The plan is lie. Give you an example. This is a Dem strategist breaking down how the party should approach immigration in the midterms.
The Democratic think tank Searchlight Institute and former Chief of Staff for Senator John Fetterman, Adam Gentleson, former Director of ICE, Sarah Saldana, and former Congressman from New York and former DOJ staffer, Mondaire Jones. Okay, so Adam, this is your wheelhouse. It's your institute making these recommendations. Lay out how those 3 points work, how the Democrats talk about immigration.
Well, the first thing we need to do, Katie, is we need to stop sounding apologetic about the fact that we are a nation of laws. You know, a sovereign nation begins with a secure border. And Democrats, when they talk about immigration, especially since President Obama, often sound like we're apologetic about that fact. We need to be forceful in our defense of our immigration laws. These laws exist for a reason. We have a right to enforce them, and they should be enforced. And when we sound, apologetic about it, what we do is we create huge incentives for people to come to this country illegally. So one of the big things we propose is fixing our asylum system, which is broken beyond repair at this point. It creates a massive incentive. People come, they claim asylum. Some of them have a rightful reason to claim.
That all sounds great. Here's the problem. Joe Biden said the same shit. Joe Biden is the one that broke the asylum system. It's not broken. They just flat out ignored the law. And they did it on purpose. The plan now is to lie to you. Get back into office. They're going to grant amnesty to everybody they let in illegally. And sure, they'll probably deport 1%. The worst of the worst of the worst. People that should be in jail, not deported. But then they'll let in 90%. That's what Obama did. Obama deported a lot of people. Sure. He deported the top 10% of criminals. But he also let in more than anybody before him. He was still letting in net more than he was sending out.
But many of them don't. But while their case is being adjudicated, it can take up to 4, 5, even 6 years to adjudicate an asylum case. They get released into the country, they put down roots, they become part of their communities, but then if their case comes up and they get rejected, you have to go in and get rid of them. This is unfair to everybody involved. So we need to fix that system to stop creating these pull factors that we don't address as Democrats that are causing people to surge to the border. That's one thing we need to do as Democrats, to say, no.
What does that mean? We need to start addressing these pull factors. That means they want to start sending more foreign aid again. Does that foreign aid actually help? No. We've sent over $1 trillion to Africa. Does Africa look any better today than it did? No. There are parts of Africa that do, but it has nothing to do with aid that we sent. They weren't parts we sent aid to. It was due to them adopting republic ideals and capitalist systems.
No more false asylum claims. Let's fix the system. Let's create legal pathways. We welcome you to come to this country, but you have to come the right way or not at all.
Be fair, but tough is what you're arguing.
That's exactly right.
Mondaire, when you were watching Senator Kennedy there, you were surprised.
Yeah.
You were taken aback.
I'm so unused to seeing Senator Kennedy. Some Republicans in Congress are now willing to call out the abuses, the excesses of the Trump administration when it comes to operating in the space of immigration enforcement. I think it speaks volumes as I look towards 2028, if I can be so presumptuous about the future of our democracy, that not a single Democratic candidate, and I'm sort of using the word candidate as though they've already announced, who I believe is seriously considering running.
We have an idea who they are.
Yeah, running for the presidency, has said that we ought to go back to the way things were before that bipartisan bill that Joe Biden supported and that Republicans torpedoed because they wanted to keep immigration a live issue for political purposes. None of them
was titled
want to go back to
a bipartisan bill. It was not actually bipartisan.
Policies. They all recognize that whether it's a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, in the vast majority of situations, folks are going to be for, obviously, a pathway to citizenship or legal status while also enforcing the laws that have been on the books for many decades.
Notice how they do that. So the bill was literally titled the yada yada bipartisan border bill, right? They do that on purpose, and they do it every time they have a controversial bill they want to pass that they know they packed full of bullshit. That bill would have allowed amnesty, it would have allowed all kinds of nonsense. And here's the thing. He just called it the bipartisan border bill that Republicans torpedoed. Well, if Republicans torpedoed it, it wasn't bipartisan, was it?
In this country. That's a common sense
You're
proposition.
arguing the Democrats learned their lesson.
I think the people who are going to be leading this party in the next couple of years have learned their lesson. I think that's what's going to really matter. Obviously, there are folks on the far left of American politics who want to learn nothing from the election of 2024, but I think those folks are becoming increasingly marginalized, and I think,
the lesson
you're
that
seeing
he
that in the
wants
way
them to
that
learn?
even they have been sort of adjusting some of the language that they've been using.
Sarah, the senator kind of called you out there. He mentioned President Obama enforcing immigration laws in this country. Explain how President Obama approached it.
Well, just like every administration, including this one, there was a memo issued in September of 2014 once matters with unaccompanied minors at the time was getting way out of hand to focus on the priorities of the president, and they were very common sense priorities. That was the beauty of it. I am not so sure I agree with your guest about the Democrats learning their lesson. I am hopeful that we all can all be rational on this, but it's been a real slog to get certain members of the left to understand that ICE has an important mission that is provided by statute, and of course the laws have to be administered in a safe and rational way, and we've seen that they haven't, at least in the last few months. So the American public really ought to demand from both sides something somewhere in the middle that we can agree on.
Sarah does have a point there, Mondaire, that there is now a rising amount of rhetoric about abolishing ICE, and it doesn't come from nowhere. I mean, if you poll the American public, the feeling toward ICE after what happened in Minneapolis especially is overwhelmingly negative, majority negative. And now it's about half of the country, about 50%, that say ICE should be abolished. So that's where it's coming from. But You know, the Democrats have gotten themselves into some trouble.
All right, that's enough of that. Speaking of which, they're just going to go on with more nonsense. But speaking of which, I don't understand why the administration threw Greg Bovino under the bus, but I think it's disgraceful. I think that man did his job and did it to the best of his ability, under the best way he possibly could under the circumstances. And I think that he should have received a civilian presidential award for his efforts. And here's why. Because, as we know, no administration has ever faced the amount of judicial bullshit that this administration has. ICE and Border Patrol have never had to deal with leftist activist judges constantly dragging them into court when they're supposed to be out enforcing the law, arresting criminals. They've never had to deal with gangs of violent leftists chasing them around everywhere they go when they try to arrest bad guys. But Greg Bovino did. Including, he was dragged in front of the judge and ordered not to use tear gas and less lethal rounds and stuff, except for under certain circumstances. The same circumstances that already applied and that he was already following. But every single time they had to be deployed, and the media would run all these headlines about, oh my God, they're tear gassing Americans. Yeah, that are fucking attacking the police officers. The judge would drag him in and make him explain himself. What did Greg Bovino do? He went on every single patrol after that point with his men. He, from that point, was the one that threw every can of tear gas and everything else the judge had limited. He did those things. Personally. Why? He didn't say why. I just can tell why. And so can you, just by looking at the situation and knowing all the facts. Because he didn't want his men to be dragged in front of this fucking judge and have something hung around their neck that is not their fault for literally doing their job. He put his neck on the line for it. He did his job. He did it well, under the circumstances. And he should be remembered for that. Instead, he'll be hung out to dry. By the people that asked him to do it in the first place. Meanwhile, Anthony Fauci's still walking around a free man. Now's a good time to point out, I too am not happy with this administration for certain things, but I also recognize this administration is facing hurdles that no administration has ever had to face before, ever had to deal with before. I recognize that they're not miracle workers and cannot do everything, especially when the fucking pussy Republicans in Congress won't do jack shit either. Anyway. So that's the general plan for Democrats for 2026. Lie. And especially if you're in a purple state, what you're going to have is Democrat candidates that claim to be moderates. They're going to tell you that they're not in favor of raising taxes and that they want to reduce taxes and cut spending and get rid of the fraud and get rid of the waste. And, you know, yeah, I'm a little more liberal on some of these social things, but really I'm a tough conservative reformer running for the Democrats. It's bullshit. It's always bullshit. Abigail Spanberger, who they are all holding up as a hero right now, Because this is exactly what she did. She set the narrative that lying is the way to get in right now. And so they are all looking at her, the governor of Virginia, as the model. She ran as a middle of the road. I'm just a typical American running under the Democrat Party, but I believe in fiscal conservatism and I'm not for all this crazy lunatic left stuff. And then what happens? The moment she gets into office, she bans guns and institutes all of the typical DEI and radical leftist nonsense. Because it was all bullshit. It's always bullshit. I admit that Republicans need better candidates, and we need better parties in a lot of places. The Republican Party in my state is a joke. But I'll still take not great candidates over evil candidates any day. When I say evil candidates, I don't necessarily mean that they themselves are evil. Now, if you blatantly lie, but the policies, the ideology, I do believe is inherently evil. Collectivism, victimization, class warfare, all evil. All lead to evil things. Did you know we didn't have a single union in this country until 19 fucking FDR 35, 37, something like that? Your 8-hour workday, 5 days a week, that doesn't come from unions. That came from Henry Ford. Your health insurance and other benefits, that doesn't come from unions. That came from Milton Hershey. On and on down the list. All of the socialist or the Democrat, socialist, whatever, dream nations in Europe that all the fucking lightweight socialists here in the United States fawn over. They didn't create any of these things. And a lot of Democrats now, well, you know how many vacation days they have? Yeah, you know how much money they make, too? Sure, they get 3 weeks of vacation instead of 2. 4 weeks of vacation even instead of 2 as a standard. They also make a third as much money as you on average. An average income in the UK is minimum wage here in the United States. Seriously. And no, I don't mean the federal minimum wage. I mean the average minimum wage. Like 12 something an hour. That would be roughly, I think it's like 28,000 a year. That's the median income in the UK. But the cost of living is higher. That's why they all live in studio apartments. That's why they have 0.9 cars per person instead of 2.5. It's why 5% of UK households have air conditioning. Meanwhile, like 70% of American households do. Even here in the Northwest, there's fucking air conditioning right next to me. Things are not perfect because progressives for 120 years have been fucking this country up left and right. But they are still 1,000,000 times better than anywhere that has fully implemented these progressive policies. There is not a single progressive policy that you can point to that has made Americans better off. Name one and I'll prove you wrong. You can actually join the conversation right now. You can join me right here on Discord. Discord link is on Rumble, rumble.com/user/justbetweenus. And you will join the conversation right here next to me. Your little bubble will pop up and we can discuss. The actual call is through Discord, but like I said, the link for the Discord channel is rumble.com/user/justbetweenus. You think I'm wrong? I'll argue with you right here on the spot. One progressive policy that has made life better for Americans rather than worse. And I'll even make it easier. One progressive policy in the last 50 years that has made life better rather than worse. There is not a single one. All right, let's see. So what kind of things can you look forward to if your state gets a Democratic governor? Well, more states are looking to follow California's lead in requiring folic acid in corn tortillas. Now look, is this a particularly big deal one way or another? No. Is folic acid, fluoride, conspiracy, fucking... No. Is it the type of thing that an American government is supposed to deal with? No. If I want to buy corn tortillas, they don't have fucking folic acid in them. That's my business. I don't need the government forcing tortilla companies to fucking put folic acid in. Because the other thing they don't tell you is in order to put folic acid in, well, now you've changed the pH balance of the food, which means it's going to taste different. So now you have to put something in to balance that out. And then that might make it taste different too. So now you're going to have to put something else in and something else in, and you're going to have 50 ingredients instead of 3. Fucking stop. We know the food pyramid was fucked. But don't worry, they've got it all figured out now. 15 years after she lost her first baby in a rare, devastating birth defect, Andrea Lopez takes comfort in knowing that other Latina mothers might finally avoid the same pain. In January, California became the first state to require food makers to add folic acid, a crucial vitamin, to corn mesa flour, used to make tortillas and other traditional foods widely used in her community. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. It's not hard when you're pregnant for your doctor to tell you, hey, by the way, you need to take folic acid supplements. Why the fuck do the rest of us need it? Is it going to hurt anyone? No, it's not going to hurt anyone. That's not the point. Our government is not supposed to be our fucking parent. That is not what our government is for. Our government exists to protect our rights, to maintain critical infrastructure, and that's fucking it. Did you know that every single progressive provision, every single way in which they've expanded the government since they first got into power in the year 1900 has been under one word in the Constitution? Did you know that? The FDA, the EPA, the FBI, the fucking CIFA, the ATF, CDC, all of the ways in which they've expanded the government, made it cover all of these things that it was never supposed to encompass. One word in the U.S. Constitution. Allow me to look it up real fast because I don't remember it offhand what the word is. Hang on. Constitution, Bill of Rights, First Inaugural Address, Monroe Doctrine, Declaration. Constitution, page 36. Here it is. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States. Then it goes on, Article 1, right? Talks about how Congress will be appointed. Okay. Article 2 talks about how the president will be appointed, and what powers he'll have. Article 1 talks not just about how they'll be appointed, but what powers Congress has. Article 3 is the judicial power of the United States. Article 4, the states. Article 5 readdresses Congress. Whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution. So it's actually amendments. Article 6 talks about, let's see, debt. All right, hang on. Oh, this is, okay, so Article 6 is primarily talking about things that took place before the adoption and what to do with them now after the adoption of the Constitution. And Article 7, ratification of the Convention in 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. Zoning Convention by the unanimous consent of the United States, present on the 17th day of September in the year of our Lord 1778, 87. And the independence of the United States of America, 12th with. So where in all of this, page 36 to page 47 in this book, is this one magic word? Well, it was actually right there in the preamble. Because in the rest of this Constitution, under the powers of the president, under the powers of the judiciary, and under the powers of Congress, nowhere does it say, do you have the power to just add any agency you want to the government? What it says in the preamble, though, is we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. In order to promote the general welfare, I guess it's 2 words. What does that mean? Promote the general welfare. Well, according to Congress, and approved by a progressive Supreme Court, promoting the general welfare includes the Environmental Protection Agency. It includes the FBI. It includes every fucking thing that isn't specifically outlined in the Constitution. Now, we could have created these agencies, but we would have had to do it via constitutional amendment. We would have had to have actually added them to the Constitution, the law that creates what our government is. And then we would have had to dictate exactly what powers they have, exactly what powers they don't have, and who has oversight, or if they have equal power to the other 3 branches. But we didn't do that. Instead, Congress just decided, well, as part of promoting the general welfare, we're just going to create this independent organization, which, by the way, not a single word in here allows for an independent organization outside of the 3, which is why the president has full control over these agencies. Because if the president doesn't, who does? Well, they claim Congress. Small problem. Congress doesn't have that ability. Regardless, there's no such thing as an independent agency. It's all a house of cards. And it's all in the last 125 years. I know I'm off track, but all right. So let me look at Washington State specifically and just show you what Democrats in the state of Washington, in case you might end up with the Democrat governor next election, what Democrats in the state of Washington have done in 1 year. 1 year. And remember, they claim they aren't radicals either. The 2025 to 2027 operating budget, just passed the other day, is the largest budget ever passed in Washington state. Shocking. And related packages include 9 to 12.5 billion. This is a state of only 7 million people, by the way. So, just to put that into perspective. $12.5 billion divided by, let me get the actual population. Washington state population. 8 million. Okay, so we just rolled over 8 million. It's literally 8,001,020 divided by 8 million. That's $1,500 in new taxes at the state level, because there's actually more than that, and we'll get to that in a second. At the state level, in the last year, $1,500 in new taxes at the state level per person. And remember, of that 8 million, about half of those are children or not, or too old or whatever, not working, various things. So really, it's more like $3,000 per person more in taxes per year in 1 year. 1 year. And in case you're wondering, well, what has it been, 20 years since they upped taxes? No, it's been exactly 1 year. They also raised them the year before. Our outgoing governor, Jay Inslee, passed a bunch of new taxes just before he left office. And you know what he did? Right after doing that, he fucking moved to Idaho. His last day in office, he lived in Idaho, the next state over, which is a red state. Why? So he wouldn't be subject to all the taxes he just fucking passed. So anyway, $78 billion budget. They've added $12.5 billion in new taxes and fees over the next 4 years. Largest tax increase in Washington history, of course. This encompassed higher gas taxes, business and occupation surcharges on manufacturers, retailers, and services, i.e. higher cost of goods for you, advanced computing taxes, gambling taxes, watercraft excise taxes, fishing license hikes, and more. Local governments gained authority to also increase taxes. These hikes crush middle-class families and employers already struggling with high living costs, inflation, and the slowing economy. They make Washington even less affordable and competitive, accelerating outmigration and business flight. Democrats created the deficit through years of overspending and progressive priorities, and instead of cutting waste, they've instead just chose to raise taxes and spend more. Ferguson, that is our governor, by the way, campaigned on affordability and fiscal responsibility, but he meekly signed the tax package without any vetoes. Supplemental budgets in 25-26 brought more cuts to education, healthcare, and gimmicks like raiding the general fund, one-time shifts, etc., while pushing ideas like the millionaire tax or payroll tax. By the way, they just added more, the millionaire tax, 10%, I think, if you have $1 million or more, which has just caused everybody to flee. We all know Charles Schultz, founder of Starbucks, been a Washington state company since the day it was founded in the 1990s. Gone. Both him and the company, gone. The only company so far, Amazon, Microsoft, sorry, I said that and then I drew a blank. Several others, all trying to move. All looking to build stuff in other places. Amazon recently was going to build a new facility here, decided to build it in Texas. There's a couple companies, Boeing, Weyerhaeuser. They can't really move. Weyerhaeuser because, well, they do wood, so they kind of got to be around where the wood is. However, they could move their headquarters to Idaho. And Boeing they've already moved most of their operations out of the state in order to try and keep operating here. Because they're also screwed, not just by the state, but their union. More on that later. The fact is, it has resulted directly in higher fuel costs, $5.05 at the pump today, licenses, goods, and very little evidence the revenue fixed structural problems. Revenue forecasts keep worsening despite the fact they keep raising the taxes, forcing deeper austerity later. Republicans repeatedly offered no new tax alternatives that spent less without any service cuts. Democrats rejected it. Why? Why would you reject the ability to have a balanced budget without increasing taxes or cutting services? It doesn't make any sense. That's what we would want our government to do in every situation possible. This is what you can look forward to if you allow a Democrat governor to be elected in your state in 2026. Housing and development specifically. Key elements included rent stabilization and restrictions on build-to-rent or large investor rentals, including forced sales after a certain amount of years. We all know rent control, economically disastrous. Discourages new construction, reduces maintenance, shrinks rental supply, and worsens shortages long term. Landlords face squeezed margins from rising property taxes and insurance, while being barred from passing on the costs, leading some to exit the market or convert units. Limits on institutional investors deter capital needed for building new homes. Overall, these reforms add bureaucracy and red tape rather than truly freeing up supply. Ferguson also decided to create a new task force and a new agency, which just adds more government layers, more red tape despite promising to cut regulations regarding housing, and more spending without addressing any of the root causes, like overregulation. Labor and worker protections. Statewide ban on non-compete agreements, unemployment benefits extended to striking workers, and rights to repair rules and other mandates. Now, the rights to repair thing, there are elements that I agree with. Elements. The non-compete ban, though, that harms businesses and makes it harder to protect trade secrets, retain talent, and stifles innovation, investment in the state, already losing companies, of course. Paying unemployment to striking workers? You're literally paying people to not work. Why wouldn't they just strike always? We learned during COVID, people will gladly take a little bit of a pay cut as long as unemployment pays enough to just sit home and do fucking nothing. It raises the cost and subsidizes labor disputes. It raises costs for employers, especially public ones, meaning taxpayers, and could encourage more strikes, hurting taxpayers and services. They tilt the scales towards the unions at the expense of job creation and economic flexibility, contributing to a less competitive business climate and high taxes and regulations. Healthcare and social services, they've prohibited medical debt on credit reports, which encourages higher healthcare costs and defaults passed on to others. Reproductive and social expansions are ideological priorities, and they divert scarce resources while core services face cuts. They've also added permanent supportive housing, which is nonsense because we have had housing offered to our homeless forever. They don't want it. They don't take it. You can force them into it. They'll burn the house down. I've told the story about Centralia, who bought a hotel and forced anybody who was homeless, they had to live in this hotel. So what did they do? They just started cooking meth in the hotel until it was condemned. Then, ironically, the state couldn't even burn it down. They had to tear it down with, under, bunch of EPA bullshit and dispose of the waste in an incinerator, which cost a fuck ton of money. lot of good that did for the taxpayers. Budget pressure leads to cuts or caps affecting schools and universities, shortchanging students despite record prior spending. New mandates add costs without proving gains and outcomes. Critics argue the system remains bloated, with funds going to administration or progressive initiatives rather than basics like reading and math. Washington remains near the bottom nationally in schools. We also remain near the bottom nationally in police officers per capita. Bob Ferguson promised $100 million if he was elected governor to fix this, to hire new officers and to fix the officer shortage problem, which completely stemmed from the BLM Summer of Love bullshit in Seattle. Instead, the $100 million program was watered entirely down in negotiations. Funds can go to non-hiring, co-response, and other uses. Has a slow rollout, and 0 officers have been hired, according to the current reports, making it entirely a symbolic gimmick. Worse than that, they just passed a law to allow illegals not only to be police officers, but to be prosecutors too. So you could be arrested and put in jail by a non-citizen. Tell me how that makes sense. They've tied officers' hands and contributed to crime and the perception, as well, of disorder. Overall, Democrats passed to fund adjacent policies and have left a staffing crisis. Yeah. Yeah. Elections and voting. While some measures like double voting fixes sound neutral, broader Democratic election packages are criticized as making challenges harder, protecting voter rolls in ways that could does enable, irregularities. They're literally just trying to protect the corrupt-ass vote in the state. They've made efforts to tweak the initiative and referendum process, and they're called voter suppression or attempts to block citizen pushback against taxes. Critics argue it entrenches one-party power rather than enhancing integrity, especially amid national debate over, voter rolls and voter access. Under Ferguson and the Democrat trifecta, Washington's doubled down on high-tax, high-regulation governance. The state faces persistent deficits, despite tax hikes, affordability woes driving people out, housing shortages made worse by their intervention, and eroding public safety. Yet, not to mention public schools. All things that you can look forward to if you allow a Democrat take over your state house or state governorship in 2026. But if you want to stick it to Republicans, go ahead, I guess. If you're willing to put up with all that to stick it to Republicans, they will just never stop increasing the taxes. Again, $3,000 per taxpayer. In 1 year, they've increased the taxes. And it's actually more than that because that's just at the state level, not including the local level. That's on top of increasing taxes the year before that, the year before that, and the year before that. Our taxes have probably gone up 10 grand in 5 years per person. Joy. We got a opinion piece from The Hill here called America's Shifting Baselines, a Threat to Democracy and Governance. Just more on why you need to keep Democrats as far away from your state as humanly possible. When I mentioned to a young congressional staffer that the process for passing the big beautiful bill would have been unthinkable in 2006, she looked genuinely confused. This is how policy gets done, she said. And based on her own experience in the 2020s, she was right. But I played these games before. I first arrived in Congress in 2006 as a science fellow and returned in 2024, working during the Biden and Trump administrations. What I recognized the second time around wasn't just political polarization, but a wholesale shift in what Gen Z staffers and citizens perceive as normal in American democracy. By the way, this comes from Cheryl Kisherbaum. Let me look her up real fast, see if I can get a picture for us. There she is. Pretty much exactly what you'd expect. She is, let's see, how can I put this on screen? It's this one right here. Trying to make it bigger, but, oh, it did work. Okay. No, not that one. Yikes. Hang on. Where'd she go? There she is. Why does it keep doing that? Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so... There we go. Okay, there she is. That's Cheryl Kisherbaum. She said, "This isn't nostalgia for some imagined golden age of bipartisan cooperation, but an observation based on my background in ecology." Shifting baselines is a term that scientists use to describe how each generation views the environment of their youth as normal, regardless of how degraded the system may be compared with the past. For example, a scuba diver may visit a pale, sparse reef and marvel at its beauty, having no personal memory of the vibrant ecosystem that existed decades before. To them, this is thriving. Generation after generation, the baseline for what's healthy and acceptable continually erodes. Again, that's what a shifting baseline definition is. When this happens in democracy, we lose the ability to see, okay, we're not a fucking democracy. We are a constitutional republic, and the difference matters. Anyway, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, how'd I know that's where this was going? Is case in point. Now look, I'm actually going to agree with her on this, but she's full of shit about part of it. The massive package combined healthcare, tax, immigration, and energy policy into a single piece of legislation that passed overnight. Members voted on thousands of pages they had received only hours earlier. Does that sound familiar? That's because every single law Democrats have passed for the last 50 years has been the same way. With no hearings or floor amendments. In the past, this would have required months of committee work and debate because it affected so many aspects of American life. Legislative process is only a part of the story. Shifting baselines extends to how we fund government itself. Consider government shutdowns. Before 1995, funding gaps were mostly technical lapses, rarely lasting more than a few days. Then, Newt Gingrich weaponized a shutdown as political leverage. Yes, hardly the first time, but forcing major prolonged standoff that was treated as a constitutional crisis. The public was outraged because shutdowns are viewed as a break in case of emergency last resort. Today, these events seem fairly perfunctory, with the pace accelerating dramatically in recent years. We now have the infrastructure built around this dysfunction, including protocols for furloughs, designations for essential versus non-essential personnel, and contingency plans that allow us to manage the crisis rather than prevent it. Okay, so before we move on too far here, I want to say two things. First of all, the fact that we have non-essential government personnel at all, those are all people that can be fired. Every single one of them. They're non-essential. We don't need them. And as we've all noticed, the government functions just fine during a shutdown. By the way, get rid of the TSA. We don't need to fund the TSA. Just get rid of it. We don't need the fucking TSA. They've never done anything except molest Americans at the airport. That's it. But as far as the bill, I'm glad that a Democrat finally realizes that putting together thousands of pages and voting on it all at once is a bad thing. I'm glad that you finally recognize that. So how about we undo every single bill, including the big beautiful bill, I'll give you that. But every single bill that has been passed that way, and make them pass it one page at a time. Rand Paul's introduced this bill every single year he's been in Congress. All bills must be single page. They're too fucking lazy, is what it is. And they want to get shit through that the American people have no idea about. That's how we ended up with Obamacare. It was passed in the middle of the night to avoid any Republican being able to object. Thousands of pages, not a single Democrat had read it, to the point Nancy Pelosi literally said the words, "We have to pass it to know what's in it." It was supposed to lower our health care, give us more options, and provide insurance to those that didn't have it. Now, 15 years later, it has not only done none of those things, it has done the opposite. Less people have insurance. It costs more money than ever, nearly 5 times what it cost pre-Obamacare, and we have less fucking doctors than ever. Get rid of it. Why would we still keep it? Even Republicans are talking about we need to reform it. We don't need to fucking reform it. We need to get rid of it and start over. Healthcare was better before it. So get rid of it and go back to there and then try and fix the problems again. And if that fails, we go back again. Why can we never get rid of fucking terrible legislation? It makes no sense. As for government shutdowns, I think it just proves how unnecessary our government is. Get rid of them. If you want to end government shutdowns, we have to end... This isn't a shifting baseline thing either. This is a failure to understand how our government works. The reason we have more government shutdowns today is, 1, the American people accept it. 2, because our country is more divided than it was before. You never have a 60-seat majority. If you want Republicans in Congress to get Trump's agenda actually done, they need 60 seats. You must give them 60 seats. Now, if we give them 60 seats and they don't do it, fine. Then we can bitch about all these things. Then we can say we're never voting for a Republican again. I still won't say that, but then you have a reason to. But you have to at least give them the opportunity. The idea that they own all 3 branches right now is not true. Yes, technically by the numbers they do. But Congress isn't controlled by a 51 majority. It's controlled by a 60 majority. Or at least a 59. Because the vice president can tie break. But anyway, let's see. Threshold, triggering the next one. Did anyone under 30? Shutdowns are a failure. This phenomenon also reaches far beyond Capitol Hill. For young Americans coming of age in the 2020s, a constant state of political combat has been normalized. Within just a few years, they have witnessed Capitol breach, protests sweeping through cities nationwide, encampments and clashes, college campuses, ICE raid. Yet all this is normal. It's just part of the political strife in America. You think the fucking 60s and 70s didn't have this? You're a moron. Graphic images of unrest in the U.S. swiftly circulate on social media. That is different. I'll give you that. Resembling what we once associated with countries in crisis elsewhere. Yeah, but here's the difference. First of all, it is mostly peaceful. Despite leftists being violent, there aren't civilians being murdered in the street. Except for when leftists do it. But regardless, there aren't civilians being murdered in the street. And these things were happening before, we just didn't see them because we didn't have social media. What we need is better perspective of the fact that we can see everything that happens in every town 24/7. We couldn't see that before. That's why this whole thing with police has gotten insanely out of hand, despite the fact that less than 10 unarmed people are shot by American police per year. And in all those situations, in the last year that we have complete video for all 9 scenarios in that particular year, I believe it was 2019 was the last year we had video for all 9 scenarios where police shot an unarmed person. A couple of them, it was because they tried to run him over with a car. A couple of them was because they pretended to have a weapon. Cop doesn't know you don't have a weapon if you say, I got a gun, and you're holding your hand in a backpack. He doesn't know. He's not going to wait for you to pull it out and shoot him. None of them were questionable. They were all still legitimate, even though they were unarmed. Anyway, this doesn't say political tension didn't exist before. Of course it did, but the frequency and intensity of this moment represents fundamental change. No, it doesn't. It simply doesn't. Young staffers and young citizens broadly operate in a political system they inherited with no lived memory of how it ever functioned differently. Each generation accepts a more eroded version of governments. I disagree to a point, making the next step away from democracy harder to recognize and easier to justify. Over time, we risk losing the capacity to see the need for the course correction. Consequences can be irreversible. As a marine biologist, I watch regulators set fishing quotas based on already overfished populations because they had no data showing what healthy numbers once looked like. They managed decline, not restoration, because they had lost the baseline for what restoration would even mean. The fishery I study collapsed within a few years and has never recovered. Now I need to speak up and see the same dynamic threat. I don't know where that would be, but whatever. When I think back to the early career staffer who didn't understand my concern about the big beautiful bill, she was interpreting the moment based on her firsthand experience of how politics works, but it makes me wonder whether future generations will be able to remember the principles upon which American constitutional republic was founded. Will we continue to recognize when it's necessary to push back if our personal memories are only of political upheaval? The ecological answer is sobering. If baseline shifts too far, restoration may become unimaginable. Yeah, whatever. Look, at this point, if you even consider voting for the Democrat Party, they have offered no change. Remember why you didn't vote for them in 2020, okay? What have they changed since then? What have they said, you know what, fuck, we shouldn't have done that. That was stupid. Nothing. Nothing. Case in point, here's Nancy Pelosi guiding an orchestra.
Democracy issue is everything. We're in our 250th anniversary. We have no King's Day today. Our founders did not want a king. Our founders did not want a king. They wrote a constitution that said we don't want a monarch to declare war anytime he felt like it. That's why they have Congress declaring war. They didn't want somebody in charge of all the money to do whatever he wants. That's why Congress has the power of the purse. So the separation of power is essential to not having a monarch.
You guys can never figure out what to do with the damn money.
Free and fair elections.
Why is the government shut down right now? Money.
Independent judiciary. Forget about it. Rule of law, due process, freedom of the press, separation of power, all at stake in this election, you so rightfully say.
Yeah.
However, our experience is, and as we do that, that's why I say we save the democracy at the kitchen table. People usually vote what they see their immediate self-interest and they see as an immediate threat. I think they're so patriotic, they think our country can survive even this thing. But I thought we could survive one. I'm not sure we can survive 2 terms. In my view,
it's rather ironic that somebody that has fucking sat in Congress for 50 goddamn years says no kings. Also, regardless of whether you're left or right, why do you keep voting for incumbents? Nobody is happy with Congress. If you're a leftist, you're not happy with Congress because you don't think they do enough. If you're a Republican, you're not happy with Congress because you don't think they do enough. So why would you vote for the same people not doing enough? I'll never understand it. Just vote for a different fucking name. You don't even have to vote for a different party. Vote for a different name. Oh, fuck's sakes. All right. I don't know if I can take any more bullshit tonight. All right, let's play this one. Unrelated, but we're going to play it anyway.
It's now been revealed that the Chinese who manufacture virtually all of our solar panels, both in the United States and Europe, they have been installing cellular radios inside the inverters, which can act as kill switches. And you might think, well, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. Not a conspiracy theory. There was actually a Chinese solar company that turned off the solar panels and sent up a little message to its users saying we've turned this off because these solar panels are only authorized to be used in certain countries. They can't be used in Pakistan, the United States, and a few other countries. It popped right up on the monitor. There was a huge discussion about it. So we know that the Chinese solar companies, all of which are essentially can be used as arms of the Chinese military. There's really no daylight between them. The Chinese government has made it clear that they can be viewed as extensions of the Chinese security state. They are able to switch off large amounts of solar, and if you are able to do that, then you are able to cause the depowering and thus the blackouts of the grid. How big of a problem is this? We don't know. I mean, we know that these capacity exists in the inverters. Obviously, the Chinese government wants to continue to be able to sell solar panels to us. I think most national security experts view this as something that the Chinese could do if there was, for example, an invasion of Taiwan and the United States decided to defend Taiwan. The Chinese could potentially trigger blackouts in the United States and Europe. As crazy as that sounds, that is the reality, and in fact, there's not any debate about that. That's where we're at.
Which begs the question: all that money that Joe Biden spent to buy solar panels in the United States, why the fuck didn't we spend that money to build them in the United States? Why do we always send that money to China? Why do we send $1 trillion every year to buy shit manufactured in China when we could manufacture it here in the United States? Is this actually happening? Are the Chinese actually putting quote-unquote kill switches in solar panels? I don't know. There's simply no way to know. Could some of them have them? Maybe. Do they? Maybe. Can they? Absolutely. Not hard at all. They can either design it to fail after a certain point in time. They can design it to fail based on a certain trigger. Doesn't really matter because it's not that hard to do regardless. They could also, if they wanted to invade Taiwan, they could also take any of the land that they own in the United States. We know they've put up spy balloons from them before. They could also just launch some weather pyrotechnics, some weather flares into the sky near solar farms. This is well-documented technology. This is not conspiracy theory. This is the same. We've showed you the companies before that make rain clouds. You can also fire these things from the ground. You don't actually have to disperse it from a plane, although it wouldn't be that hard for some, Chinese exile to get a pilot's license and a Cessna and go up there and light the flare out the window. They attach it to the wing, but it's not that big of a deal. It's a little thing like this big, goes off like a smoke bomb firework. That's all it is. And it can create torrential downpours. Or just create enough shade that the solar panels aren't any damn good. Or create a hailstorm that damages all the panels. There's all kinds of ways. The problem is we don't recognize that we are at war with China. It's just asymmetrical. Because they know they cannot take us on militarily. And they know that now more than ever. Speaking of which, back to why we aren't actually these other countries and why these countries that like to parade propaganda in front of us all the time about how much better than us they are. Just like in Russia, where a bunch of Russian military folks and top scientists and stuff in charge of the war in Ukraine suddenly started falling out of buildings a year or two ago. Well, now in China, after the invasion of Iran, after the invasion of Venezuela, has proven that U.S. equipment does fly with impunity over both Russian and Chinese radar technology. Well, the inventor of that radar, which also invented the radar for the J-20, which is China's flagship fighter aircraft based on the F-22, but it's also based on a prototype aircraft that didn't end up, it was like the competitor for the F-22, but it didn't get the program, but then that competitor, we think, sold that technology to China illegally. And it seems pretty obvious because when you look at the photos, I'll see if I can pull it up here in a second, but when you look at the photos, it looks almost identical to that prototype. Regardless, the flagship of that aircraft is its stealth and its radar. Well, the scientist in charge of making those radars that swore that it would make these things invisible to U.S. systems, we don't know he's dead, but nobody's seen him in over a year. It kills me that we just... greatest country on earth, and we just take it for granted. We just let it go. So, let's see. Looking for that picture for you real fast. I had it here, I just need to see. There it is. So this is MD was the name of the company that was believed to share their technology in the 90s with China. This was a direct competitor for the F-22. The F-22 ended up winning the contract, and the belief is that they illegally sold this off. And as you can see, so that's what the American prototype plane looked like. Here's the J-20. It's basically the same plane. Doesn't have the turbofan right here for vertical takeoff, but that's about the only difference. Which just means more room for weapons, by the way, but it is a decent-looking plane for a foreign plane, but ultimately useless. Reportedly, Yang was probed after China's JY series anti-stealth radar sold to Venezuela and Iran and proved ineffective. China had used the J-20 as a test target and falsely told Xi Jinping the radars could detect the F-35 and F-22 stealth jets. This raised doubts about the J-20's claimed stealth capabilities. Again, you see the community note. That's not saying this is lying, it's just saying that he has not been found dead, he just hasn't been seen for over a year. So whatever. This is why communist countries can't defeat the United States. This is why these nations, they physically can't do it. Because in the United States, up till this point, the farther progressive we go, the worse it gets. Remember Europe? right? This place that progressives point to all the time, and we need to be more like Europe. Less than 1 in 3 Europeans would fight to defend themselves, according to recent studies. They would not even fight to defend their own life. 66% would not fight to defend their own life. It's not true here in America. And here in America, if you work hard, you can succeed. If you get smarter and work hard, you can succeed. If you fail, you have the ability to try again. Nobody holds that failure over your head. Nobody throws you off a fucking balcony if you fail. And people fight for this country, not for the president, not for Congress, not for fear of our families being killed if we don't go and fight for this country. We fight for this country because we believe in the idea of this country. We believe in the Constitution. If we lose that, we have nothing. What makes this country different is that it is based on that idea. And when I say that idea, let me clarify. It's a very complex idea. There are many facets to it. It is not simply the Constitution in and of itself. It is not simply the Bill of Rights in and of itself. Those are facets of the idea. The idea is not simply capitalism. That is part of it. It is capitalism guided by a moral conscience, a Christian conscience. Whether or not you believe in God, that's fine. But the principles are Christian inherently. They guide that morality, they guide that conscience. It is in individualism, not in collectivism. That does not mean individualism, does not mean selfishness. This is the least selfish country in the world, yet it is the only truly individualist country in the world, proving that it does not mean selfishness. The idea of individualism is not that I will always put myself first. Yeah, the idea of individualism is that the individual knows best what the individual needs. Because you do. It is also an idea that if you succeed, you get to keep the products of your labor, of your success. But if you fail, you own that too. These are not universal concepts in the world. Leftists would have you believe that these are all universalized. This is not unique to America. It is. The problem is, the farther we go, the more people start walking away from those ideas that made us this nation in the first place. And if we lose sight of those ideas that came out of the greatest minds to ever live, that created the greatest country to ever exist, we will be no better than the rest of these countries. Think our government is bad and corrupt now? You have no idea. You don't have the slightest clue what a bad and corrupt government looks like. No matter how corrupt our government is now, our government is still accountable. All you have to do is vote for somebody else. That's it. And that's what Republicans voted for in 2024. And it's why some are upset right now. And I'm upset too about certain things. But like I said, this is also an administration that is facing more backlash than any administration in history, more bullshit than any administration in history. Because demons, they don't like to go easily. And that's fine. So I personally am willing to give at least the 4 years. You have the 4 years. I will decide truly at the end of the 4 years. But I'm not going to abandon everything because I'm unhappy at this moment. This moment doesn't matter all that much. I elected you for 4 years. Part of that means you need a Congress that is going to support you for that full years. That means that it is my job this year, halfway through, to make sure that I keep that Congress in place to allow you to finish the job you started. Otherwise, I'm taking away your ability to do the job, and you can't finish it. God help us. Even though Alan's not here, I think I want to finish on a prayer for this nation. Let me see if there's any other videos I wanted to play tonight, and then if not, we'll go to that. Yeah, actually, I wanted to play this one. This one's it's just funny. It's not anything serious. Oh no. No, did I not put it in here? Come on, I've got to have it somewhere. Hang on. Oh, here it is. Okay. This is Canada. Democrat Party in Canada.
Thank you, Delegate.
Remember, we saw this a few years ago at the Socialist Convention in Florida. Ironic. I know, they hold it in Florida. In the United States. These people don't change, okay? They're the same. No matter what they sell you, no matter that they tell you that they're moderates and they're actually fiscally conservative, they're not. This is who they are at their core. This is who Nancy Pelosi is. This is who AOC is. This is who Chuck Schumer is. This is who Hakeem Jeffries is. And this is who every blue governor who is going to tell you that they are a moderate in 2026 to try and get your purple state vote. This is who they really are. And I say that, I know that, I say that confidently because it has to be based on what they say they believe.
There's a point of privilege on microphone 1, then we'll go to microphone 3. Go ahead, Delegate.
Yes, hello. I was standing here with my gender equity card before you called on the previous speaker. That's my point of privilege that I would like to raise.
I will explain the speaking order, which is fixed, that I cannot amend, which is the pro-con rotation. You can move yourself up a line that you're standing in.
I am pro, and I was...
We went...
You went pro, con...
We went pro-con, pro, and my plan was to go con. The speaker at con mic 3 also has a speaking card.
Yesterday, this card was used in an inappropriate manner. And while I understand in Ontario we know this is equity, even if this was also used inappropriately in terms of gender. I want everyone to be mindful that these cards for individuals like myself who identify as a Black woman have no value outside of this space.
Boy, that couldn't be more true. You are damn right. Those cards have zero value outside of that space. Yeah, but don't worry, these people can run the government so much more efficiently. Also, I've said this many times, but it absolutely blows my mind every time I see him. I thought this was a fake voice. This is this dude's real voice. But we all know who the Krasenstein brothers are. We all know that they're fucking hucksters. But they always are sharing the latest in Democrat propaganda. Here's a beautiful example of one of those situations, and it very clearly and quickly being debunked.
I don't get it. Why are people making such a big deal about the current president Donald Trump being on his own coin? I mean, plenty of other leaders have been on their own money.
Hi, I'm your friendly numismatist here to fact check you. Let's get to the vault.
All right, let's get this one out. All right, so here we have a assortment of different currencies, Soviet Union, etc., etc. We are going to be looking for Nazi Germany currency, all right? There we have hyperinflation currency. Give me a moment. Okay, there we go. So this one is 1942. Oh, wait. There is no Hitler here. Interesting. How about this one? This one is 1937. No Hitler here. No Hitler. Where's Hitler? Maybe this one. This one is also 1937. Wait, where is Hitler? I don't understand. Where is Hitler? And just to double check, I also looked it up. Nazi Third Reich. All of the currencies, okay? Reich. No Hitler. There is no Hitler anywhere. Well, why is that? It's because Hitler never put his face on the currency. Not only that, look at this. Neither did he put his face on his coins. Look, you got a lot of swastika action going on, but none of these coins have his face. What about the silver denominations? Look at that. You got a swastika right here and here. 1935. Nope, no Hitler. But guess what? Guess who is on the Nazi coins? The democratically elected Paul von Hindenburg. Interesting. That's interesting. What is Paul doing in a Nazi coin? But still no Hitler. How about Nazi-occupied Serbia? Nope. Because, as I said, Hitler never put his face on any of the currency or the coins. You know what that means? That all of this is fake. These are not real Reichmarks. All you needed to do is do a quick Google search and it would have told you there are no Hitler currency. There are Hitler stamps, though. No Hitler currency. You fell for it. You are an idiot, but it gets better.
Still being alive, right?
We got some Benito Mussolini action going on here, but you gotta see this one. This coin, you can find it on eBay. It's a fantasy issue coin, man. This is not real, man. Because no, Mussolini never put himself on any official currency during his rule. Guess what? Only Victor Emmanuel, the king of Italy, who was very much alive, was put on the coins. Oh, this is so humiliating for you.
So anyway, I actually have a 1939 Nazi penny from the Berlin Mint, and I can't really show it to you because I have the kinda little bit. Oh, there we go. There you go. You can see it's got the eagle with the Nazi symbol underneath, and then on the back side, it's just a 1. No Hitler on there. You can't really see it, but yeah. And if you ask me why I own a Nazi penny, I don't know. Feels kind of it. I won't lie. It feels kind of weird. I think I paid like $1 for it. They're not super expensive, but it just. I like currency in general. I have a collection, not nearly as nice as that guy's, but I have a collection as well, and this is part of it. Regardless, I don't like the idea of Trump putting his face on everything. I don't love the gold everywhere either. Most of us probably don't. But first of all, as far as the gold, every president gets to decorate the White House. What he gets to do. I don't care. I don't like it, but I don't care. But as for his face everywhere, I don't really like that. It does feel a little un-American. We do put our presidential faces on the coins and stuff, and I'd be perfectly fine with that, but it's usually after they die. And I'd prefer at least that it was a future president that does it, not Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with doesn't make him a fucking dictator or a king or any. It's all nonsense. But yeah, I don't know. Feel how you feel about it, I guess. All right, that's it for tonight. I'm tired. I'm out of here. Let's. I want to say a quick prayer for the country, and then yeah, we'll be back Wednesday, I guess. I might be back tomorrow if you want to watch the show. Normally, this show is Wednesday through Sunday, but Austin has been doing. He's been trying to get his live streaming going after taking a short break, and I've been doing that with him. And I'll generally turn mine on because I'm already sitting here with him anyway. I might as well have mine going too. So you can check back in tomorrow. You can check in at rumble.com/user/just between us, and it lets you know when the next scheduled stream is. I usually try and do that as early in the day as possible so that, whatever time, usually between 6 and 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is when we go live. And then x.com/JBU_show. I usually also will post there. And that is, of course, where you can watch the show. Rumble and X are the place we prefer you do it because they don't ban us. We just got back on YouTube. This is now my third stream to YouTube since my last strike. We'll see how it goes. I might have gotten myself another strike yesterday. So far, nobody has noticed, thankfully. So we'll see what happens. Nonetheless, let's, hold on. Let me get this ready here. All right, let's go ahead and say a quick prayer. Dear Lord, we pray for this nation. We pray for everybody that is suffering today, whether it be financial or otherwise. We pray for the president as he tries to navigate the minefield that has been laid down in front of him, regardless of how any of us may feel about him. We obviously want him to make the best decisions for us and for the country. So we pray that you watch over the president and protect him and allow him to make good decisions for all of us. We pray for the forces at work trying to protect this country, that they make the best decisions. We pray for our men and women that are overseas right now and in harm's way, that they all get to come home to their families. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. All right, guys. With that, my name is Chris, and this has been the JBU Show.
Bye. Wait, I can want to be a little bit louder.
Yeah.
This is only between us.
This is just between us.
This is between us.
Perfect.
My friend at the Huffington Post says she wins by 5 points.
Oh, I don't know. My friend at Slate says she'll win by 3. Oh, well, she'll definitely win the Electoral College, for sure. But I guess there's like a nightmare scenario where he wins the popular vote.
Really? That's your nightmare scenario, huh?
Because of shifting demographics, there might never be another Republican president in this country.
Word. You ever been around this country before?
And we project Kentucky will go to Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, of course he won Kentucky. I mean, that's where all the racists are.
All of them are in Kentucky?
Oh, you know, she got Vermont.
Oh, snap, Vermont! 3 electoral votes. Now that's a power grab.
Okay, this says Florida is too close to call.
Okay, no, it says too early to call. There's only 1% in.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and call it. Florida's going blue. To Latinos.
To Latinos!
Well, of course he's going to win Ohio. We knew that. But if we can get Pennsylvania, Florida, and North Carolina, we don't even need Ohio.
Yeah, and if the Indians had having 4 more runs, they would win a World Series too, dude.
I'm gonna grab a Xanax from the bedroom. Okay, will you grab me 6? Yeah, I'm just gonna bring the whole bottle. How's that?
Look, early returns are always going to be Republican because Republicans go to sleep early. That's just a fact.
I just talked to my brother-in-law at CBS. He says Trump's gonna win Florida.
Word. I guess that the Latinos didn't hear about your toast.
Hey guys, what'd I miss?
Larry, Trump might actually win.
I mean, of course. What are you talking about?
I tried to tell him, Larry.
What is happening? Why are women even voting for him?
Yeah, I don't get you ladies. I mean, the country's 55% women. I mean, if the country was 55% black, well, we'd have tons of black presidents. I mean, Flavor Flav would be president.
Okay, all she has to do is come back and win Wisconsin, come back and win Michigan, come back and win Pennsylvania.
And some of the counties, the urban counties, they're so, black people vote late.
Yeah, let's hope there's 100,000 of us in Green Bay. You know, brothers love the Packers.
You never know, guys. Alaska's still out there.
We're now calling Alaska for Donald Trump.
Oh my God. I think America is racist.
Oh my God. You know, I remember my great-grandfather told me something like that. Well, you know, he was like a slave or something.
I can't believe it. Like, why aren't people turning out for Hillary the way they did for Barack Obama?
I mean, maybe because you're replacing a charismatic 40-year-old black guy with a 70-year-old white woman. I mean, that's like the Knicks replacing Patrick Ewing with Neil Patrick Harris.
And Donald Trump has been elected President of the United States.
Yeah, you guys are right. It's a historic night. Don't worry about it. 8 years are gonna fly by.
Yeah, don't worry. It's gonna be all white.
What about undocumented immigrants?
Oh, they're not going nowhere. Come on, man. You act like everybody trying to pick their own strawberries.
This is crazy. I mean, do you even know what it's like to be a woman in this country where you can't get ahead no matter what you do?
Oh, jeez. I don't know. Let me put my thinking cap on that one. I'll get back.
Now, come on, guys. Get some rest. You got a lot of big day. You got a big day of moping and writing on Facebook tomorrow.
God, this is the most shameful thing America has ever done.